We need to have everyone who is a patient, loved one of a patient, be involved in advocacy, and no differently than they would if they were a labor union member, an environmentalist, or cared about some other issue. We could change the whole world tomorrow if anyone running for office could see how many people cared about this issue in their district, and like other, quote, special interests would see that if they didn't vote the way that that group wanted them to vote, that it would cost their support in the next election. That really, to me, is the best way to get the kind of major investment in infrastructure that will allow our country to move in a totally different direction. Unless we have the political pull through, and we would be the biggest special interest group in this country, bar none, by far, not even close with anyone else. So, and I might add, the most passionate. So that, to me, is the way we change everything now. Once we get everyone identified and advocating, we have, through the Kennedy Forum, identified a policy guide so people can have an idea of all the different pieces of the policy that need to be put in place. And we call this the alignment for progress, because we have to align housing, employment, medication, health care, social services, all have to be aligned. And currently our budgets don't align those meeting those needs. And it's like the three-legged stool. If you don't address the threefold illness of a biopsychosocial illness, it's not going to be a successful endeavor. So we have to really address this in a comprehensive way, which is entirely doable.
And I would just say, while Patrick is focused on the macro, and the macro is incredibly important, part of the reason the macro has not happened is not because we don't have good ideas, but because the majority of people don't feel that they can be honest about what's going on with them and open with their struggles. So they can't be open about what they need. They can't join with others and realize what they need. They also see, because of politics, their individual experiences is different. So people who have psychiatric diagnoses see themselves as different than people who are treated primarily by psychologists. People who have alcoholism see themselves as different than people who are addicted to opiates. People who lose people to suicide have big debates about whether their kids had mental illness or not before they took their own lives, when in fact we know that 90 to 95% of all people who try to take their own lives or take their own lives have a diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health issue. And the bigger issue is, who cares? The goal is, how do we make sure that people are open about what they need, open about the danger they are in and the symptoms that they have, able to talk to their family members, to their bosses, to their friends about what they need, and get their needs met. And so what we tried to do in the first book was a memoir of Patrick tied to the dramatic history of how to try to get this done politically. And the second book has no politics in it at all, except a QR code on the back to the Alignment for Progress. But what it shows is the individual lives of people and the people around them, and how challenging it is to deal with these illnesses, how they are recurrent when we don't understand their recurrence, how they push the love relationships in your life. But we also found people who, I think, even though they describe sometimes very, very difficult situations, give you an enormous amount of hope that strength and care can help. But mostly knowledge. And so the biggest thing that we wanted people to understand each of these individual, in each chapter is about a different diagnosis, but each of these people have a mixed diagnosis. Two of the families have lost somebody to suicide. But what we want, Patrick's politics have been about the parity of coverage and the parity of insurance. But we also have to have parity of understanding and parity of compassion. And I'll go back to one thing you said. I don't think liberals are any better at this than conservatives at all. I think most of the society they know now to say that things are better, but if you ask somebody who has the illness, they would say it's better. So it's fine for them to say that, especially during COVID, that more people have an understanding of mental illness. I don't think they have an understanding of what it's like to have a mental illness or what is needed for the people who have the mental illness to feel that they are being cared for. We still have a long way to go, and we need to stop pointing at other people and saying, you're the ones who don't get it. The whole society needs to do better in their understanding. And look, we've seen this happen. I grew up in the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. When my brother was diagnosed in the 70s, nobody knew anything about diabetes. Nobody knew about cancer in this country. Now people know everything about the care of these illnesses, including how challenging they are. But with mental illness, we are still, we're still back in the 40s and 50s with the same challenges. And I think it's time for us to admit that we've made progress in some treatments, but people aren't using them as much. And part of the reason is because as a society, when you hear that your best friend's kid has something wrong with them, mental illness or addiction, the first thing you do is say they did something worse as a parent than you. And until we can get people to stop doing that, to stop judging and start just being compassionate about the fact that somebody's ill and needs help, we need to confront that.